All right, welcome, welcome. So we're just going to kick this thing off now. My name is Justin Seitz. I lead up the crew at Dark River Systems, and today we're going to have a little fun with Hunchly and Maltego. Now, you remember a couple of weeks ago we had Andrew Fordred on who opened up the fire hose and gave us this awesome demonstration of what it looks like when an expert fires up Maltego and Hunchly side by side and starts to do some really cool stuff. Today is going to be much more like put your reggae music on, relax. I'm going to show you how you get started in the Hunchly side, how to go from just having Maltego installed to getting Python installed, then the Hunchly transforms, and we'll do some basic stuff in Maltego. So much slower, kind of lower level, be a great intro if you're new to Maltego Hunchly. This will be a great way to get warmed up to then go back and watch Andy blast you with the fire hose again and show you how an actual expert does it. So hopefully you can see my screen just to let everyone know this is recorded. Again, we record these things and post them to YouTube. So if you run into audio trouble at this point forward, or video trouble, or something's not working, there's not much I can do about it. So if you can refrain from blasting tech support requests, it helps. But the recording always comes out nicely, so you'll always get a nice recording at the end. Just not able to help troubleshoot from this point forward. And please ask lots of questions. Use the question and answers box. I will stop and take coffee breaks frequently, and I will prompt for questions. So don't be shy. I won't out you. Nobody's name gets used, and it usually spurs on some great discussion. Cool. So let's get started. So we're going to start just from kind of the very basics. And the very, very basics is that we've got Hunchly installed, we've got Maltego installed, but we've never captured a page in Hunchly. And we don't really understand what is the mental connection between capturing stuff in Hunchly and doing all this graph-based stuff in Maltego that all these fancy people like Andy are doing. So to start with, what you're looking at right now is the Hunchly dashboard. Some of you are very familiar with it. Some of you may not have ever seen it before. This is where you're going to manage all of your cases in Hunchly. And when you capture pages in Hunchly, this is where you're going to review all of them. So when you first get started with Hunchly and it opens up, you've got this blank case called unassigned. And it's really important that you set up a new case. So, and this will also be important because case names are how we run Maltego transforms later. So that's how we actually tell Maltego to do stuff. It's based on case name. So let's create a new case. We're going to call it Justin Sites. So we always just use me for maximum embarrassment. All right, and that's it. We just created a new case. This is like any Hunchly user has done before. Create a new case, and now we're actually ready to kick off our investigation, go capture some pages. So again, just to walk you through the basics of this. When you fire up your browser, and when we say browser, Hunchly supports anything that's not Firefox, basically, and Safari. So we support anything Chromium based. That's Microsoft Edge, Chrome, Chromium, or Brave. So all of those things, anything that's Chromium based is supported. And when you first fire up Chrome or one of those browsers that we support, you may or may not see the Hunchly extension. So this new kind of way of doing things is to actually hide extensions. You might not see it. You might just see this puzzle piece, and puzzled indeed you might be. You can click on it, and then you can just click here, and that'll pin Hunchly for you so that it's always kind of at the ready. Now you'll note that it's kind of angry and grayed out, not working. And that's just simply because the automatic capture system is currently disabled. So again, for a new Hunchly user, the real benefit of Hunchly is you turn it on, you go off and do your investigative work, and it's capturing every page, timestamp, URL, plus doing a bunch of other stuff. But really, it's preserving everything you do. So what we do is we flip this on, and we're just gonna head over to the Justin Sites case, make sure our pages are actually being stored there. Sorry, I had a sticky mouse there. And that's it. Set up a case, turn on the automatic capture, make sure you have the right case set in that drop down in the Chrome extension, and now we're ready to start investigating. So we head to google.com. Now, first time Hunchly user, you've actually just been trained on evidence collection with Hunchly. So the act of browsing to google.com has actually captured this page, timestamped it, and stored it locally on our hard drive. And it's showing up here in our dashboard in the history view. Now, this is also something that we can access later in Maltego. So both the content of this page, some of the post-processing that happens in Hunchly, as well as some other details, we can access this via Maltego later on. Cool. Of course, Google's not super useful unless you search for something. So again, the nice thing is, and apparently this is all I tweet now, is good morning, and good morning. That's it. That's my social media presence in a nutshell. Well, what we've done here is simply as we begin kind of clicking through various links, as we're looking at images, Hunchly is doing the work of preserving these pages for us, storing them on disk, is doing some analysis on the images, and is even doing things like extracting little pieces of data from behind the scenes, like IP addresses, usernames, other things that can be useful both in tools like Maltego and other places. So this is really handy. All we have to do is continue investigating. Hunchly's going to be along for the ride, collecting all of those pages. This is the default normal way that we do things in Hunchly every day in, day out, is just this general activity of regular investigative work or research and having that research automatically preserved. Okay. Now, the cool thing is when you click on a page capture in Hunchly is that it's a pretty good, accurate representation of what you looked at that time, right? This all is very, very good. You'd be able to take this into court and explain what exactly you saw or why it's important. And when we're talking about court, or we're talking about having to use any of these materials in a legal context or having to present them at a trial, there's all the critical information is here for you, right? So the first thing is really, what did I see? It's always the content that drives a lot of things, right? So we have the what did I see, where did I see it, the URL, when did I see it, the timestamp. Now the hash here in this case, what this is going to allow me to do is that if I need to submit this page as evidence to a third party through disclosure, right? So send it to another attorney or send it to a police force, whatever it might be, I can send this hash along with it and say, here's the hash for this page and here's the page. And then on the other side, they can also hash the page in the same way and validate that the act of transmitting or handing over that evidence didn't modify it, right? So that's what it's that unique hash is telling you. And we actually detail all of this in our knowledge base as well. We have an evidence guide at support.hunch.ly. So this is how we capture pages. This is how we review pages and take a look at them. I'm going to take a bit of a pause right here, and I'm just going to head over to the Q&A box. Are there any questions around page capture, the timestamping, the hashing, any of the stuff that you've seen so far? This is really the core fundamental thing about Hunchly, is that it stores pages, right? So that's what it's doing as you browse around. It's an important thing to kind of mentally pin, because when we move into Maltego, really the Hunchly page is kind of what everything else connects to. So I'll just take a brief pause here as I take a sip of this delicious coffee. And if there are any questions, now's a great time to ask. And I see a few coming in already. So coffee and questions. All right. So what version of Maltego is recommended? They have various types. I presume you are running Pro. So I run Classic, I believe it's called. So it allows up to 10,000 entities or nodes on the graph. So it's not inexpensive. It's not like it costs a bit of money. But there are other alternatives, varying from like trials all the way up to bigger, where you can lay out larger graphs. I found that Classic was kind of ideal for the individual researcher or small company. All right, cool. Why not support Safari? That's a great question. I don't think there's enough people using Safari on desktop, for one, and Safari's extension model is just vastly different than Chrome and Firefox. Chrome and Firefox unified. I'm not even sure what Safari's doing anymore for their extension model. So yeah, there was a number of reasons. We never supported Safari, although we did wish that Firefox would implement some of the pieces so that we could support that browser for sure. All right. Another question. Is the data stored in databases or is it a flat structure? So it's actually two, it's both. Hunchly stores all of this both in a flat structure laid out by case, so logically on disk. We can actually go into our documents, Hunchly data. I just got to go to meeting out of the, or go to webinar out of the way here. Cool. So your cases folder is a flat structure that contains everything in it. Within that structure are your pages and other materials. We haven't generated other materials yet, so you're not seeing them. There are also other data sources in here. So we use a full text index to give you high-speed search across all your cases, as well as providing you with like a kind of Google-like search syntax. So there are parts of that in here. But if you're ever interested in hacking Hunchly, not supported, by the way, so if you mess something up, our support team can help. But this is actually a SQLite database, and it's wide open. So you can just open it up and look at the internal data structure of how Hunchly organizes pages. But there's also things that you can do in there that hopefully Phil isn't listening to this because I'm going to get in trouble. But yeah, you can go in there and like build your own data extractors that will extract data off of web pages by creating tables in that database, all kinds of stuff. But I didn't tell you that. That was not me. So yeah, it is both a database and flat structure. Great. Perfect. And one more question, then we're going to move on here. Can the administrator of a website see the captures by Hunchly on the back end? So I guess I'll reframe this question how I think is a good way of answering it. So um, does the owner of the website that you're capturing know that you have Hunchly installed and are taking captures, right? So I would say if you were taking a capture on a website and it was somebody who was highly paranoid, technical, skilled, and knew investigative technique, like how people would be tracking them, it's a safe assumption that they could probably build a detection technique for Hunchly and other tools to try to figure that out. Now, 4 or 5 years ago, there was a security researcher who was able to detect the presence of Hunchly based on the way we did this, like one certain thing in the very early days with the product. We fixed that, but the safe assumption is that like operational security is kind of a multi-layered thing. So you have to assume that any single part of your tool set could be exposed at any given time. And what does that mean to the rest of your tool set? Or is that a managed risk that you can say, what happens if somebody does know I'm capturing with Hunchly right now? So operational security, I guess it's funny because we kind of that's outside of our area of expertise, but it's a good question. We have not yet, to my knowledge, like had any situation yet where like a website does something like that. But it's only a matter of time, as you know, people are going to be they're incentivized to not get caught, right? So it's a great question. It's a great question. Is this where you tell us that Hunchly discount code for 10% off? All right, so we already have the hecklers in the peanut gallery in the back there. That's great. Thank you. Excellent. Cool. All right, so let's pop back to the dashboard here. So that's page capture, that's the basics, but there's a few other things I want to kind of highlight to you before we jump over to Maltego. And I don't want to spend too much time in Hunchly today because we have ample resources on how to do everything in Hunchly. But what I do want to mention here is a few things. One is selectors. So selectors are the keywords that describe the subject of your investigation. They have a few different functionality or like uses, sorry. The first is when we enter a selector. So, for example, Justin Sites is a good one because that's the name of our target. What this is going to do is actually search backwards through your case and mark every page that had that term in its content or source code. It's going to mark that page with that selector hit. Really useful. Now, it's not really useful when you have 3 pages and it's very obvious like this. However, if you've been investigating for 4 or 5 days, you've accumulated a few hundred page captures, and then you punch in a new email address you've discovered as a selector. When it comes back with hits, that's telling you that sometime in your previous travels, you had already encountered that email address. You just didn't know it was important. So what you can do as soon as you see that count be anything other than 0 is click it and start reviewing all of your previous pages to see where you saw that information previously. I have actually unwound entire cases just by one selector hit, making me go back and review old pages before. So that is really, it's a useful little trick. Now, the other cool thing everywhere we go, as we are browsing now, Hunchly is actually going to be automatically looking for that term, looking for that Justin Sites term, and automatically marking those pages for us. So it's like having a little finder bot constantly running in the background, looking for that term everywhere we go and tracking hits for us. So again, it's useful in a sense that it's kind of managing that for us, but it's also useful because we fatigue as investigators. And when I get tired and I've been reading like court transcripts all day, or I've been reading, I don't know, you know what it's like reading anything. You read Facebook posts all day. Not only does your brain slowly start to wilt away, but you do get tired. And this way, if you miss something on a page, Hunchly is there to kind of pick that up for you so that you don't drop it. So this is really useful, and you can use whatever you want here. You can use social media usernames. You can use telephone numbers. If you're going to use telephone numbers, I suggest just using the last four digits because telephone numbers can be represented in so many different ways. Use the last four digits. It might result in some false positives. So you might get a bunch of hits that are just like four sevens in a row somewhere randomly. But it is a good strategy, at least if you do have phone numbers that you're looking for. So selectors are really useful. I use them on, it doesn't matter if it is a case that is 10 pages or 100 pages. I use it every single time because I don't trust myself that I'm not going to miss a key little term or miss something in the source code. So definitely this is really useful. I'm going to skip tags because that is covered very well in our desktop sessions. Same for notes. I'm not going to kind of dive into some of the documentation and organization pieces of Hunchly, but it's worth checking those things out. But images are really cool because images in Hunchly, they're automatically extracted as you browse, and we store them separately on disk. So if you work in law enforcement, working on CSAM or trafficking, sex crimes, in your Hunchly data folder, you have a separate folder called photos that is literally every image off of every page that we could possibly extract and hash. So we extract them separately for you so that you can pull them out. This means that you can then upload that folder to your image forensic tools, to your tools like Griffi or others that for other processing or looking for matches. Now, the other cool thing is as you're browsing, Hunchly is actually searching through the images looking for EXIF metadata, and we'll pull it out for you here in this view. So this is really cool. We see some information about the image that we didn't see clearly when we were browsing because this is hidden. It's stamped into the photograph. And there might be investigative clues in there that are telling you, other things about your subject that you didn't know before. The other cool thing, if you ever need to test this, is you can go to arstechnica.com. So you may read that if you're a tech news reader. Ars Technica has a ton of metadata in their news stories, so it's a great place to go and test this out just by browsing there. Okay, and one more thing before we start to take a look at Python, Maltego, and some other things, is I just want to show you this data tab. So in the background, and I mentioned this, I guess, in the data or the database hacking part, but the data extractors are just basically little regular expressions that are running in the background that are pulling out pieces of information from the source code. So it might be Google Analytics tracking codes, which again might be useful when you're tracking down domain co-ownership. Things like infrastructure, IP addresses, email addresses, anything that is generally useful as an investigator. We try to pull this out separately here for you so that you can use it in other tools, or again, in Maltego, these types of things can be really nice to pivot off of. Discovering a Google Analytics code will allow us to run intelligence tools based on analytics codes. So that all being said, this is a very quick little brief tour of the core concept of kind of capturing pages with Hunchly, getting set up and understanding how some of the things you do in Hunchly are going to be translated onto a graph in Maltego shortly. So with that, I'm going to take a brief pause. I see at least one question in the Q&A box. Have a coffee sip, and then we'll start plugging away at getting set up to start running some transforms. All right, perfect. So, question here: Are there online Hunchly training? Sorry, is there online Hunchly training available for online investigations or for people in law enforcement? So, yes, we have both, and I'll just put this up now, I guess, very quickly since folks are asking. Turn off capture here. So, youtube.com/c/Hunchly. So here is a ton of training videos of me and others walking through anything from Maltego, dark web, data forwarding in Hunchly to desktop training. Desktop training walks you through the whole front to back everything, just doing general day-to-day stuff, including building reports and other things. We also have a knowledge base, so support.hunch.ly. I can put these things in the chat window at the end of the session. The knowledge base has a ton of things, including getting started. Inside the getting started section, this is basically broken down into every section of our online demo. So if you want to know more about building reports or full text searching, we have both video and written materials here for you, so you can go through them at your own pace. And then if you're getting into more advanced stuff, you want to start writing code around Hunchly, like kind of in the Hunchly ecosystem, building transforms or doing Flask stuff, or you want to get into that, we also have paid training. We have a couple of courses out. There's more coming very soon. So if you want to start learning how to build automation around Hunchly or other things, there's also training available for that. Cool. All right. Okay, question. My Hunchly is not capturing photographs. Am I doing something wrong, or is that a setting I need to enable? No, so Hunchly should capture photographs by default, no problem. However, if it's not extracting the photographs, like not building that little photos folder for you, if that's what you're referring to right here, so you're not getting anything in here, there is actually a setting that down here in your settings page, extract images right here. So this setting is turned on for me. Sometimes people turn it off because what it will do, if you disable the image extraction, Hunchly will run faster because it's not having to extract images, do metadata scanning and extraction, all this stuff. So definitely, if you're not seeing any photos in your captures, like when you go to look at them in your dashboard, that's a bug or something going on with the website where they're unloading images. Definitely send us a support ticket. It's just support@hunch.ly. Otherwise, if you're just not seeing that nice photos folder, check this extract images setting. And if it's set to off, turn it to on, click save, and then see if you start seeing some photos showing up. All right, perfect. Cool. So we're going to leave Hunchly right here for now. We know we have a Justin Sites case. We've captured a handful of pages. Now we are going to jump into Maltego. So I have Maltego installed. I don't have anything else installed. I use Wing Pro for writing Python scripts, and our Maltego transforms are written in Python. So don't feel like you need a development IDE, but it will make your life much, much easier if you start writing your own code. And Wing is a great IDE for writing code for this stuff. Okay, well, let's fire up Maltego. Classic 4.2. So there's the version that I'm running. Perfect. It's firing up. You'll get this little kind of intro homepage thing. So you first fire up Maltego, and this may, at least to you or to me, it does feel a bit overwhelming, right? There's a lot of stuff here. But largely, everything you see here, you don't necessarily have to click on anything or do anything. If you just want to kind of mess around with your Hunchly stuff, you can ignore all of these things. However, all of these things are called transforms. And transforms are just like little pieces of code that you can run in Maltego with the idea that it's going to try to go out and retrieve information for you. So you could run a transform on an IP address that might tell you who is the actual internet service provider that owns it. Then you could run a transform on the internet service provider asking what is their abuse contact information. Then you could run a transform on that email address that tells you more about that email server. So you can see the idea is for you to kind of work visually and start to build a graph outwards as you are collecting intelligence, trying to piece together a story or an investigation. Now, naturally, Hunchly and Maltego are well fit for each other because Hunchly is not designed to automatically do anything but capture what a human's doing, and Maltego's job is to try to use automation to assist the human investigator. So what you can do is you can scroll through some of these transforms and look at them. For example, this one's really cool, the blockchain.info Bitcoin one. So if you wanted to install this, you would click install, you click yes, and what this is going to do is it's going to install a set of transforms for me such that I can now plug a Bitcoin address in and collect intelligence about it. Okay, very cool. Just with a couple of clicks, I was able to install that. It's free. But there are also others that are paid, right? So you can get things like paid transforms from folks that will allow you to tap into their products like Intel 471 and others, right? So you can see it's worth like scrolling through these because some of these you can install for free, or like a Shodan API key, for example, is super cheap. It was like $25, I think, or something the last time I looked. Maybe it's higher now, You get into things like SocialNet, which is a really powerful set of transforms, and same with social links, like social links, SocialNet. These things are really powerful things. They will collect intel for you on social media accounts, all kinds of stuff. All right, so we're gonna go back up here. Assume that we're just a Hunchly investigator. We don't care about all this other stuff right now. We just want to get Hunchly set up with Maltego. So we have to first import and tell Maltego what Hunchly is. And we do that through a configuration file that we provide to you for free. So what you need to do, head to our knowledge base, okay? support.hunch.ly. Down here is our integrations, Maltego transforms, okay? And I'm just gonna follow the link to the latest release. Phil so graciously put here. I'm gonna grab the zip file. Perfect. Now I may have already got a download in this folder. So let's just grab this and I'm just gonna extract this all to my desktop, okay? This is just both code and a configuration file from us that is gonna allow us to make Maltego Hunchly aware, okay? So taking a look in here, just very quickly, this is the folder. We have a Python folder. This is where all of our Python scripts that we provide as transforms are. That's where they all are. We have a Hunchly configuration file. We have supporting documentation that Divya and Phil have built. And a lot of this code now in the Python folder is not mine. We have other folks. Divya has kind of taken over writing the code for that. So that's everything there. What we're going to do is import that Hunchly configuration file. So back in Maltego, I call this the alien menu because when you click it, it makes a little alien woo noise. I'm going to go import, and I'm going to go import configuration. All right. If you have any questions about any of this, don't hesitate to ask as I'm going. You're not interrupting anything. It's not rude. All right. So all I'm doing, I'm at my desktop, and I'm going in here, and this is a fun little one with Java file windows, is if you don't click on the little icon, there we go. And there's our Hunchly configuration file. Okay, click next. Now, if all of these are not checked, like mine aren't, make sure you check them. Okay, make sure all these boxes are checked. This is saying that things like entities, which are, we're telling Maltego things like a Hunchly case. This is what a Hunchly case is. This is what a Hunchly page is. A page and a case are things called entities. We have local transforms. Those are the Python scripts that we've provided. We have transform sets. So a transform set, all of these transforms fit inside the Hunchly transform set. All right, pretty straightforward. We have a machine. So we're going to tell you what I'm going to show you what a machine is very shortly, but we have one of those for you as well, which basically, instead of you running one transform and then another, a machine goes and takes transforms and runs them one after the other for you, building your graph out automatically. So we'll see what that looks like. And we got some icons so that we can clearly see what a Hunchly case page looks like on a Maltego graph. Okay, cool. So we're going to say these things are imported. Nice. And hit finish. Any questions so far about Maltego, importing a configuration file, what entities are, anything like that? I'm going to take just a 10-second pause here. All right, hopefully this is not like also getting the fire hose. Not that that's a bad thing. The anti-fire hose is awesome. All right, cool. So we've got that imported, but now we actually need to configure them. We're not done yet. The transforms need a bit of configuration. So what we need to do is click in the ribbon up here to transforms. And we have what's called a transform manager. Okay, so I'm going to click that. Now the transform manager allows you to manage any and all of the transforms that are installed. Okay, now we're only interested in configuring the Hunchly one, so it can look a little overwhelming, but you can make it a little simpler by just typing in Hunchly and letting it filter down. Now you're not going to have these Hunchly TRX ones. These are newfangled transforms that are coming. You're going to have these ones. And the only configuration we need to do is we need to tell Maltego and the Python interpreter where these transforms actually are on my hard drive. That's all. So how we can do this very simply is I'm going to go back to my desktop. Okay, I'm just opening the Python folder. And up here in the URL bar, if I click there, I just heard my own Canadian accent, by the way. I can copy this. Okay, that gives us the full path to where the Python files live. Go back to Maltego, select all of them. So I'm just holding the Shift key down. I've got this one selected, Shift key down, click, screwed that up somehow. Click, and there. All right. Now, all I need to do is I can grab this scroll bar here and working directory. Okay. Click the little dots, kill this, whatever is in there, kill it with fire, and paste in the path that you just copied. All right. We're just telling it where the working directory of these files are. That's it. Nice. All right. So let's take a brief pause here because what we know is that it's going to run those scripts, those transforms as Python, right? So let's actually do a quick test here. Make sure that we have Python installed, which we do not. Now, this is cool. And this is something that Phil pointed out to me this morning. Okay, in Windows 10, if you type Python into a CMD prompt and nothing happens, and then you get the Windows Store, the Microsoft Store open, it will actually install a fully working Python environment for you just because you screwed up in the command line. It's amazing. I didn't know that it did this. So you can install it from here. Now, I personally have never done a Microsoft Store install, so I'm less than trusting of the process. No offense to anyone, to Microsoft, Phil, or otherwise. So we're going to do the old-fashioned way. We go back to our browser, and you always know, no matter what, you can go to python.org to worship at the Oracle. Here on the Downloads menu, right here, we're going to download Python 3.97 for Windows. Now, it might be for Mac OS X, whatever platform you're on. You could be on Linux, Mac, or Windows. It should give you the right option right there for you to download it. If you don't get the right option, you can click View the full list of downloads and go find what operating system you have and grab an installer. All right? Most folks that I know and most of our customers use Windows. Cool. So let's install Python. Now, this is where a mistake can easily be made, right here, this first window, because my gut instinct is to continue bebopping to whatever music I got playing, click the install button, and just carry on my day. But you're missing a critical checkbox, this one. You want to add 3.9, Python 3.9 to the path. This will make Python available to your entire Windows installation. Okay, so this is going to solve a number of headaches. If you've ever messed around with Python, getting it installed, and you type Python into your terminal and you're like, why the hell is this not working? It's because of this. So hit this, make sure this box is checked, and hit install now. Yeah, we do. Okay, so it's going to just install Python for us here. All right. I've got a question here waiting in the wings. Are the Hunchly transforms available for the community version of Maltego or just the paid expensive version? That I'm not sure. Our transforms are free. I don't know what version of Maltego you need in order to run local transforms or in general. But if somebody here knows, definitely let me know. But you can use Maltego and Hunchly for free for like a month to test this all out, just to see if it's something that's going to be useful or if you need to do some needs analysis for sure. Mm. I didn't mute for that gulp of water. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, someone's saying you need the paid version at least, Maltego 1 for the transforms to work. Okay, cool. Nice. But not for us. Our transforms are free. You can download them, install them into whatever version of Maltego will accept it. Okay, so we have Python installed. Now, don't do anything yet. What you should do is first make sure that Python is actually installed, meaning that you open a new command prompt. If you had any other command prompts open before, close them because they will have the old, they will have basically an old view of your operating system. They won't be aware of Python yet. So let's hit type Python. Let's actually type it into our terminal though here, Justin. All right, Python. Woo! Okay, now the other thing you want to make sure is that a command pip works. And the reason for that is because tons and tons of Python libraries are just installed very easily with pip. You want a library for parsing HTML? Bam. You want a library for converting IP address blocks? Bam. There you go. You want to be able to do video? Pip install OpenCV. I won't do this because it'll take forever, but that'll actually give you all the capabilities you need to process and do your own video stuff. So pip is incredible. It is kind of the gateway into everything Python. It allows you to install a ton of stuff. And occasionally you're going to download some open source tool, or you're going to pull something off of GitHub, and they might have a file that's a requirements.txt file, and you'll be like, what the hell is that thing? Well, really cool. What it is a list of Python packages required for that transform or that tool to work. And you just go pip install -r requirements.txt, and then you leave for a coffee and come back, and Python will have installed all of this using pip. Okay, so it is really useful, and it is important that you have it installed, and it works on your command line like this. Not necessarily for our transforms, but this will solve a future problem that future you will appreciate solving. Cool. So Python's installed. We got Hunchly up and running with some pages. We got the entities and stuff imported into Maltego. Now what? Well, now we can actually start doing something. So I can actually create a new graph. So I'm going to click the alien menu and go new. And this is a Maltego graph. And again, when you're in the investigate panel here, which is where you spend most of your time, things can look a little bit overwhelming, right? There's a lot of stuff to look at. There's machine view, detail view, stuff all over the place. 99.9% of which I ignore, truthfully, right? I do. And anybody who knows me, I really don't know how to use Maltego that well compared to someone like Andy. Because really what I need to do is some very quick investigative tasks, or I need to be able to expand on an idea or a lead or something. And Hunchly, it's a great time to turn away from Hunchly and come back to it. So here's the Justin Sites 101 on using Maltego with Hunchly. The first thing you need to do is grab a Hunchly case. This is your entity palette. If it's not on the left-hand side, it might be on the right-hand side. Look for entity palette. You can search in your entity palette for all kinds of entities. Okay, so there's anything Hunchly related, type in Hunchly. We've got Hunchly cases, Hunchly data, photos, selector, right? If it's an IP address related thing, you can type in IP. You can see that Maltego has it broken down by categories, right? So if we're gonna mess around with IP addresses, you grab an IP address, you pull it onto your graph, and then you punch the IP address you're interested in into this graph, or into this entity right here, okay? So that's it, that's your entity palette. That's where you're gonna be doing your dragging and dropping. So what we're gonna do is grab a Hunchly case. I must be mistyping something because I can hear the Windows error tone. Cool, so this is a Hunchly case. Now what we need to do is tell Maltego what Hunchly case. In this case, we're doing Justin Sites. Okay, that's it. That's our setup. We've done everything else. We've got the Python, everything else. We've got a Hunchly case in a graph. What can we do with this? So when you're running transforms, you can click on it, and in the Run View panel, I don't use this panel, but some people do. You have a list of transforms in one machine. Or I usually use the context menu. So I click on it and right click, and then I have my options. So you can go to all transforms and just kind of get a feel for what is in here, like what can actually be done with this. That's all transforms. Local transforms are transforms that you have running that are code on your machine, i.e. our Python scripts, right? Our Python scripts live on your machine, thus a local transform. Remote transforms are, for example, when you run a transform and it reaches out to Shodan to pull back IP information. Okay, so I'm going to click on Hunchly transforms, and I'm just going to say get Hunchly pages. This might not work. The following occurred with transform. Python returned a weird exit code. Look at that. So we got a weird thing because of that Microsoft Store install. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to kill Maltego. This was not planned, so this is good because I enjoy when I run into problems that I know my customers are going to run into. So I'm going to fire Maltego back up. And the reason for this is that I did the install with Maltego running. So let's troubleshoot this. And if not, then what we'll do is the Microsoft Store looked like it had actually downloaded Python. I'll just go back and run the install and see what happens. All right, so we're back in a fresh, restarted version of Maltego. Let's just create a new graph. Okay, very quickly grab ourselves a Hunchly case. We're going to put in Justin Sites. And now let's see if it was just an environment problem here. It was. Look at that. So that's important to note. You remember me saying that when I ran the CMD prompt, you got to kill the CMD prompt, open it back up again? I didn't follow my own advice. Maltego was running throughout that, and it wasn't aware that we had reinstalled Python underneath. So restarting Maltego fixed that for us. And what you would have saw is those little bubbles flying out from our Justin Sites case. Now I'm going to try to get this centered as nicely as I can here. Cool. So now we have our Hunchly case, those pages we captured, the couple of Google pages, the Bellingcat page, and the LinkedIn profile for me, right? And are now represented as entities on our Maltego graph. So this is a totally different view than a history view in the Hunchly dashboard, isn't it? It's a very cool view of our data. So what can we actually do with this? Well, what we're looking at right now are actual Hunchly entities, right? So that means that there are other things that we can do for these entities. If I right click on it, so you can see this is a Hunchly page. Hunchly pages also have their own transforms that can be run. So for example, we can run get photos for page, get selector hits, or get page data. So it'll pull any of that extracted data from this page. So I'm going to say get photos for this page. And now our graph expands. Now this is only retrieving information from your local Hunchly case. Okay, so the Python is talking between Maltego over to Hunchly. Hunchly responds back with the information. Maltego presents it in a graph. So now we have all these Hunchly photos. And Andy was the one who showed me this trick. The thing is that sometimes Maltego can get a little bit confused about like what an entity is doing or trying to represent. And in this case, a Hunchly photo can actually better be represented by a Maltego photo, a normal image. So there's two things we can do here. One, we can highlight all of them like this, okay? The other way is we can say up here, this little, I call it a rook because that's what it looks like, a chess piece. We can click it and it's selecting by type. So we can say select all of the Hunchly photos. And then I right click. And this little option right here, it's got kind of one dot being transformed into another. And it says change type. I'm going to go down to personal. And then I'm going to say image. So I'm just converting the Hunchly entity into the Hunchly photo entity into a Maltego image entity. And then what will happen is Maltego sorts itself out is it will actually give us previews. So it's showing us previews of these images, which is much nicer. We get a visual representation of what were some of the images that were present on this page, right? Very cool. But now what we can do also is we're able to right click on that image and say, now we have also a potential point of intelligence, right? So we can say in our all transforms to EXIF info, right? We can say, give us the EXIF info. This is a much more thorough EXIF extraction than what Hunchly can do because we have to use a very lightweight method for extracting metadata. This is much more thorough. So if I want to grab all the metadata from the photos that I've captured on this page, I'm going to go into transforms, all transforms to EXIF info. Cool. Now my graph is expanded. So it was detected that this image at least had some Canon, a 5D Mark III stamped into it, along with other information, and that this photograph of my ugly mug was taken with a BlackBerry Classic, right? So it's giving us more information. The other thing we can do is now double click on this photo, and in the properties, all of that metadata, anything that Maltego has learned has started to populate it in the properties field. So we can start to look at some of the data here. We can also compare it to the data that we have in our Hunchly dashboard. Very cool. Now, what else can we do that's not just poking around at that? Well, the cool thing with images is that we can right click on an image in Maltego, and we can do things like a TinEye reverse image search, right? So we can say, search for pages linking to similar images or search for similar images. So let's search for pages linking to a similar image. Again, off it goes. It comes back with just one box. But if you zoom in, you'll see it says 32 of 32. So what this is in Maltego, when you get this box that's got a number in it, that's called a collection. Okay, so it's just trying to collect together, declutter your graph. You have a collections ribbon here. You can kind of change the behavior of this. So you can say, actually, I don't want a collection to occur until there's 50 of them. So now what you'll get is it'll blast it out like this, right? So your graph will expand. Or you can say anytime there's more, than 25 or whatever, then make a collection. Okay, so that's why you're getting just a single dot right here, but it's actually got a bunch of dots inside of it. So now we have a bunch of links back to this image. We can go in and kind of zoom in, and we can see that they're all related to Bellingcat. Okay, so this is all just a bunch of posts from the same website that are pointing back to it. But these are potential sources of investigation. These could very well be places that we may want to go visit in our browser, right? So the cool thing is that we're able to, whoops, sorry, I clicked the wrong button. We are able to take any one of these, copy paste it. We can use the open URL. We can say Google me. We can go open all URLs. It's going to open them all in a browser, right? Pop over to Hunchly. Hunchly's already capturing, right? Now we're moving back and forth between the two tools, right? And if I want to get an update on the graph now that I've captured a new page, I can do that. I can right click here, get Hunchly pages. That's going to pop in those new pages I just collected, right? The new Bellingcat stuff. And now I'm kind of seamlessly moving back and forth as I bounce between, okay, it discovered a new URL. Kick that open in the browser for me. Hunchly captures that URL. I go back, update the graph, right? So you can start to kind of get a bit of a cadence going between the two things. Holy crap, can you tell I've been doing spin? so, so a little spin joke there for you. So this is really cool. This is a really neat workflow. It's got a ton of potential where you can kind of run back and forth. But what's also interesting is there is a lot that can be teased out of even the simplest of Hunchly cases. It doesn't require you to click around on every one of these things and run transforms and do all this stuff. You can literally grab a case, pull it in, go to machines here, or up in your ribbon menu, machines, run machine, scroll down, Hunchly full case extraction. Click next. We're going to go Justin Sites. Finish. We only collected a handful of pages, but you're about to see a fairly big graph come out. Okay, so this is a very small Hunchly case with obviously a lot of information that we can start digging at. And we can start picking at things like, okay, what are these entities here? These are phrases, and Hunchly's converted the EXIF metadata into phrases. might probably prune this out of my graph, right? Because I already have EXIF tools inside of Maltego. I'm not going to worry about that. So I can clean that out. You can start looking at some of the IP addresses that Hunchly is extracted, for example, right? So on this google.com page, there was this IP address. Some of these might actually not be IPs. They might be version strings, so false positives that we would have to clean out. We can start to examine looking at relationships where there are shared images as you start to see entities cross over, right? So when I grab an entity like this and you see those two lines pulling at it, why are the two lines pulling at the same thing, right? What is shared between these two URLs? Now I can start to zoom in and go, oh, both of them are from Bellingcat. And what are they linked to? A Google Analytics code. Ah, okay. So I can actually right click on that, convert that, infrastructure, tracking code. Now I can right click on that, all transforms, and I can say other sites with same code. Are there other websites that have that tracking code? Right? Again, move back and forth between my browser. So there's a ton of things you can do here. As you can tell, even the simplest Hunchly case throws off a ton of data. And then it's up to the investigator to kind of curate their graph, dig into those things, dig into those relationships. But often the big roadblock happens somewhere along the lines of like Python doesn't install correctly, or these transforms, I don't know how to download or install them. But as you can see, once you get there, your existing Hunchly data, like if you've already got cases in Hunchly, you may very well want to go back and revisit them through the lens of Maltego and try these transforms and try to pull some additional intel off of existing cases you already have. And I mean, I do this occasionally, stuff that's like I just couldn't solve or figure out or whatever. I'll do that occasionally, just go back and load it up into tools and see if there's stuff that falls out of it. Okay, so again, hopefully a fire hose of much smaller proportion in this case today. I see some more questions coming. This is really the best kind of way for you to get your feet wet with this and kind of get going with Hunchly and Maltego. And I do encourage you to then follow up with rewatching or watching for the first time Andy's video where he does a much more in-depth kind of dive at this stuff. I'm going to move back over to my question and answer box here and answer some questions. We are nearing the end of this webinar, so please, if you have any lingering questions, feel free to start sending them now as we start to wind this down a bit. I'm just going to take a peek now and have a sip of coffee real quick. All right. Can you think of the easiest way to take, say, 3 different people's Facebook friends and map them through Maltego for connections between them? Yeah, so there's a few different strategies you can use there. If you have a list of friends and friends of friends, like in an Excel sheet kind of format, again, go back and watch Andy's video, because what you can do is instead of using Maltego as kind of an intelligence tool, you can just use it as a visualization tool by importing. Okay. And you can import that as like a CSV. So just you can import that data and start to visualize the relationships. Now you don't need Maltego for this necessarily, because Casefile, a free product, so Maltego Casefile may do some of that for you depending on how complex it is, but that would be the best way. Now, if you're talking about just throwing in 2 names and start running transforms to map connections, you're looking at having to spend some money on either social links or social links, social net. Yes, social links, social net. You'll be looking at spending some money on either of these, and that can range in the hundreds to thousands of dollars in order to run transforms that will do some of that automatically for you. Okay. Next one. Are you working on Run Transform to make Hunchly run directly from Maltego? So I would love to dig into that question more, because if the question is really like, is there a way for you to write a transform such that I can take a Maltego URL, right click it, have a browser that gets opened and captured in Hunchly, then we could totally do that. I think just setting your default browser would work just by using that, but we could make that a transform for sure. There are other things that you can do as well when you start driving a web browser, like using code like Python. So for example, one of my favorite libraries to do this is Selenium. So we can pip install Selenium. And what I can do is I can drive a browser, load the browser up. I can get the Hunchly Chrome extension in it and running, and all with like just a handful of lines of code. And then if I want to do website monitoring, so let's say I want a Hunchly capture of google.com every 5 minutes. It'll do that. It'll just keep browsing to google.com every 5 minutes, and Hunchly will do its thing, right? You can also simulate keyboard events. So if you need to, for example, some websites have these really tricky loading mechanisms that with a human, Hunchly, like with a human driving it and scrolling and forcing things, it works totally fine. But in other cases, you have to kind of like do some shenanigans to make sure that the capture works. And the cool thing with Selenium is like you can get the page laid out or to the certain spot you need it to make sure the capture is good. And then you can actually use Python to send a keyboard shortcut saying capture this page with Hunchly now. So you don't rely on the automatic capture, you're actually simulating the key presses to trigger an automatic capture or to trigger a manual capture. Because we do have keyboard shortcuts that get registered with Chrome when you install Hunchly. So there is literally anything from automating collection, like data collection, which I've done in previous sessions on YouTube of pulling video and analyzing it, all the way to transforms, driving a browser, all that stuff. I mean, we do research, have discussions, build tools and prototypes all day long, testing all of those things. So definitely, once you have code, you can get pretty much, you can bridge pretty much any two tools. Cool. Is Maltego extracting also geolocations from EXIF data? Yes, they are. So they will extract metadata from images that have geolocate, like um, my apologies. They have the actual coordinates in them. Sorry, not geolocation. My apologies. So yeah, it will do that. So will Hunchly. So if you browse, there used to be a great photo. It's difficult to find now without me running through a 10-minute exercise on the Wayback Machine. But Hunchly will pull out GPS coordinates and it'll give you a link to Google Maps right in Hunchly. Maltego will also do that. So if it finds them, it will extract them. And the EXIF metadata is also full text searchable in Hunchly. So if you're hunting around and you run keyword searches in Hunchly, you might occasionally get back a weird result. I better renew my license. Jeez. So for example, if we search for BlackBerry here in Hunchly, it's returning an image because the EXIF metadata is indexed, it's stored. So in this case, it didn't return any web pages, but it's telling us the term BlackBerry was found in the metadata of this image. Okay, cool. And you can keyword search Hunchly from Maltego as well. Who was the model for the little Hunchly icon guy? All right, funny story. The Hunchly logo was a logo I just simply purchased the rights off of a logo store for. That's the truth. It was just I'm like, cool, look at that little detective looking thing. I'll take it. And now you have Hunchly. So there you go. Cool. Awesome. Well, I don't see any other questions. Hopefully, this wasn't too painful or too much information being thrown at you all at once. I hope that it helps to be able to just kind of slow things down and like move through the motions of everything from collect some pages to get those pages displayed and analyzed in Maltego. Naturally, if you have any questions or there's any other follow-up stuff, definitely take a look at our knowledge base here, support.hunch.ly. You can contact us from here. Support@hunch.ly is our email address as well. Again, our YouTube channel is just here at youtube.com/chunchley. You can also just search for Hunchly in the search bar at YouTube and it will pull it up for you. So tons of resources there, and the Hunchly Training Institute as well. So it's just hunchly.training will take you to the Training Institute. So we have a ton of resources online, free dark web mailing list, a bunch of other stuff. Go check it all out. Feel free to email us. And if there's anything else that I can help you with, you can also check me out on Twitter and hit me up there. I'm jms.pie on Twitter. And I thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me today. This was super fun. We actually managed to get it done inside of an hour. So I just pat myself on the back for that one. No major catastrophes. I didn't swear. It's a good day all the way around. Give us a little while. It takes us sometimes a day or two to get the video re-encoded, edited, and back uploaded. So we will be posting the recording as soon as it's available. Keep an eye on your inbox, and I will see some of you next week when I do another one of these about something else. All right. Thank you so much. It was good to see some of you as well, and I hope to hear from you soon. Bye-bye.